Hello, welcome to our SAC, which is the Society for Advancement of Consulting, expert group of supply chain and operations and finance type professionals, as well as the APICS, or also known as ASCM for the Association of Supply Chain Management webinar series, Emerging with Supply Chain Strength. And today we're going to talk about a really critical topic that relates to what is going on in terms of inflation, deflation, what do we do about it all, and what are we seeing out there? So we are going to talk about this with a panel of experts. I'm Lisa Anderson, president of APICS Inland Empire and also president of LMA Consulting Group. I am located in Claremont, California. And I have with me today Diane Garcia, who is newly from Arizona. So welcome, Diane.
Well,
yeah. I also have Evan Bulmer. Evan is from Adelaide, Australia. So he's going to talk a bit more about the Pac Rim. Welcome, Elmer. Welcome, Evan.
Thanks, Jane. Lisa.
Exactly. And speaking of that side of the world, we also have with us today David Ogilvie. David is from Brisbane, Australia. He's also works in the supply chain and ERP world. So welcome, David.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Nice
and last but not least, certainly, is Karen Wilson-Starks, and she comes to us from Denver area in the U.S. and she worked. Is that right?
No, I am Dr. Karen Wilson-Starks from Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Colorado. Okay, so I knew it was Colorado. I shouldn't have gone with the city. So with Colorado Springs, Colorado, we'll just make things up today. And she works with global clients throughout the world. And so we are here today to talk about inflation, deflation, and what we see going on. So I think let's start with, and if you have questions, which I know a lot of you do, please put them in the chat box or the Q&A, and we will fit them in as we go. But let's start with what we see happening today, but we won't spend a ton of time on it because we want to get to what can folks be doing about this situation. But, we'll start with what do we see happening? So, Evan, let's start with you since you have a financial background, but also a business background. What do you see happening today in Australia and, surrounding areas?
Look, there's no doubt that there are interesting times in terms of inflation, price increases, supply chain issues, etc. And I think in Australia, we're watching our construction industry be a real lead indicator of this problem because they've had fixed costs, increase on them dramatically. They've had contracts they can't go back to the customer and increase their price, and they're cash flow positive at the start, these businesses. So it becomes a bit like a Ponzi scheme at the end. They've got to keep selling at the top to run it out the bottom. Well, they've hit a jam and they're going under left, right, and centre. They can't manoeuvre. But if I look at the small to medium business market in general, I think there's three things that they should be concentrating on. One is operational efficiency. Nearly every business I know, isn't working as efficiently as it could. It hasn't got its people mix right, hasn't got its culture right, and hasn't got its client selection correct. They're things you can work on internally that allow you to increase your price or increase your value to the market and get over the top of this thing. So you have to be quick on your feet in this time.
All right. Well, so what do you see? So sticking with Australia, Pac Rim area, what are you seeing, David? I'm certain you're probably seeing some of what Evan's seeing, but are you seeing any other nuances to where you are?
No, well, Evan's summed it up pretty well. Every organization is dealing with supply chain disruptions. Every organization is dealing with fairly substantial price increases in their goods. They're dealing with resource constraints, that in they can't get good people, they can't get people to run their business, all of those sorts of things. So these are all coming together to create a significantly challenging environment for people to operate in. Now, Evan said he's got 3 things. I guess drilling into those, I've got 6 areas that organisations can be focusing on to help them. They all kind of fit into the operational bucket that Evan just mentioned before. But there are some specific areas that managers and executives can focus on to improve their opportunity to manage this successfully.
Great. Well, that's awesome, because between all of us, we'll probably have, 10 to 20 tips that folks can take home and, be successful during these trying times. So sticking with the construction theme that Evan brought up, and also, David from inflation, deflation, and what you're seeing. Karen, I know a lot of your clients focus in the construction industry, or they support the construction industry. So, figure from the US standpoint, and I know you work with global clients. So I thought I'd, go to you next and see, are you seeing, the same thing that Evan and David are seeing, or are you seeing something different? And what are your thoughts?
Yes, I think I'm seeing something similar. I may use some different language to talk about it. And first, let me just say, in an inflationary environment in general, of course, we have rising costs of goods. That's one of the things that happens. But also, there will usually be increasing interest rates by the banks to kind of balance that out, which also affects clients as well. So we need to think about both sides of those coins, because it increases the cost of doing business for clients. So now specifically about construction, I'm thinking about manufacturing in general, but I'm going to talk about construction in particular. One of the things that happens in construction is that contracts are signed way in advance. So maybe it's a year or 2 when the contract is signed, and then you're going to be delivering the work later. So if you are signing a contract today and the prices are lower, 2 years from now, those prices could be doubled, tripled, and you've locked yourself into today's prices. And so that's one of the challenges in construction that I see. So I think that customers, my clients, I should say, are challenged with how to navigate that, and they don't have the sufficient storage facilities to store big, huge construction related items. And even if they were to procure more storage space, that's expensive right now as well. And then some materials really don't store well. They might warp or they may degrade over time, depending on what the storage conditions are. So that's not always a good solution if you're in the construction industry and you've got big stuff that we're talking about that you might need to store, which means big space and so on and so forth. The other thing that I think is true, and I'm talking specifically about commercial construction, is that there are low margins in this business, at least in the US. And so there's a lot of price sensitivity. The customers are not very willing to pay more, for these services, even if it may cost more. So it's not as simple as in some industries where you can just increase prices and still be profitable. In construction, that's a little trickier as well. So those are some of the unique things that I think the construction industry is facing.
Yeah, interesting, because yesterday I was in a group with some CEOs, and one of them is related to the construction industry. And I was thinking, I'm not sure that, part of his business made sense to keep given the current situation. But anyhow, Diane, I know you work with manufacturing clients in the industrial space, aerospace and defense, healthcare, life sciences. What are you seeing going on with your clients? Similar to everyone else, or any nuances there?
Very much so. It sounds like the same scenario. I work with clients in North America, and like you said, on the global scale, and they're all very, I would say, sensitive at the moment with all these different supply chain variables, trying to understand, what the carrying costs are versus, shipping and freight costs. And like Karen was mentioning, you can't just store all of these, especially this larger product items in warehousing space that isn't necessarily available, and that costs quite a bit. So I think in general, it's very sensitive environment at the moment. And I have clients who are just trying to figure out what the best method or approach is to navigate this inflationary time.
Yeah, and I would say from my point of view, working with mainly manufacturing clients, but also heavily dependent on like logistics, is that really they're seeing price increases. They still have extended lead times and shortages in terms of getting raw materials, and they're firefighting continuously to keep production lines running with the right items, because of course customers are changing their minds, and orders are moving around. In addition to rising prices, they're certainly having a heck of a time to get people. That has not improved, so they're limited by what they can produce with the number of people they have, so they're having to prioritize who they produce for. And then they're becoming worried, although all this inflation is taking place, they are definitely becoming concerned about deflationary pressures with rising interest rates, et cetera. So they're really starting to focus more on inventory, and some of them are panicking, which is obviously not recommended, but some of them are managing it closely and smartly. So anyway, that's really it sounds like we're all seeing it's a tough environment. Is there widespread concern in your client base as far as deflationary pressures in addition to the inflationary pressures, or is anyone not seeing that?
I'm not seeing deflationary pressures. I am seeing reaction to the interest rate rises. The press, at least in Australia, is focusing on the home mortgage market, but the business interest rate market, the cost of money at the moment for many people is becoming quite significant. And certainly nothing like it was back in the 90s. When I had my other business, then we were paying 22%. So we're a long, long way away from that. But
so maybe it's not deflationary, but it's concerns about a recession.
Absolutely, recession. There's no question. There's concerns about that.
I just can't see it, David. I can't see a recession. If you're making shit and doing shit, I reckon you're fine, because there's so much money around and people are desperate to spend. I think asset prices for sure, right? But we just went off a bubble, mate. It was ridiculous. So it coming off a bit is not, I made 30% on my house over 2 years and it drops 10%. I'm still 20% up.
Right, right.
And I'm not convinced. The commentary here was ridiculous. The Reserve Bank puts interest rates up and the media goes into shock. I don't know a business person in this country that thought 2% was sustainable.
Right. Same thing here. Today they just raised rates by 3/4 of a point, and it's really still, compared to the past history, if you have any sort of long memory, it's still low comparatively speaking, certainly to the 70s.
All of our banks, think it'll peak at 6. And 6 is not silly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, our inflationary pressures in the US are like over 9%, if you will. And, we're still not close to that when it comes to interest rates. However, panic.
Isn't it weird? Sorry,
Go ahead.
Lisa, isn't it weird though? You've got the Reserve Bank in your country and we've got the RBA here lifting interest rates. But at the same time, you've got government spending money in terms of stimulating the economy. So you've got this accelerator and hard and brake hard. It's kind of odd.
Well, that is, I think, the key is that in these, I think that's the issue, is during these times we're looking at volatility, complexity, turbulence, because you're right, Evan. I mean, I think that's what's happening here is I just heard announced that they were talking about putting in another stimulus. They're calling the stimulus, which is crazy. Like stopping inflation stimulus is like, huh?
I don't want to get
the opposite of a stimulus.
I don't want to get on a
stop inflation. That's insane.
Yeah.
So yes, you're right. We seem to be doing like speed up, slow down, turn upside down, but we don't have anything sort of like level loaded, like let's cruise along here. So it seems like some clients are panicking. And I think that probably the ones that certainly have more loans and are concerned about cash, of course, they're going to panic more with the rising interest rates. But others are, just watching it, but they're not panicking. But anyway, I think that we have concerns about recession. To your point, Evan, whether that happens is another story, and it could be a technical one. And then there's certainly inflationary pressures, and that people have a ton of money and they're still spending money. The government's still spending money in both places.
Lisa,
If
let
we
me
do
make
have
a comment.
recessionary pressures, right? It just brings back the focus. We've got to focus on some of the business fundamentals. We've got to understand our cash flows. We've got to understand how we manage our inventory, and all of that. Those 6 points that I've got there are all focused on the fundamentals. You get the fundamentals right, and you can manage and succeed in any environment. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Karen, and then we'll start talking about some of the ideas and solutions.
Yes, I wanted to just comment on this part about the escalating interest rates. And one of the strategies that I'm sharing with some of my best clients about that right now is some people already have debt that is at a lower rate. And so we have to think about the fact that that's an advantage to be able to have that debt. And especially if it's at a fixed rate level or there's a very small margin in which the debt can move in. So in a way, you've got extra money if you've got old debt. And then for those who may not have old debt right now, the other thing that I'm suggesting is for them to anticipate and think about what they might need to have in terms of cash reserves so that they can borrow before the interest rates go up higher, so that they're still having a lower rate for the inflationary times, because they may need that given what's going on with the cost of goods in the construction industry in particular. And then I also want to respond to a question that's in the chat that Keith raised about whether I'm seeing a lot more force majeure kind of situations going on with companies because of all of these dynamics that are happening. Here's what's really going on with commercial construction. They're putting in the end customer of my customers is they're putting in a whole lot more clauses right now, so that if you're not delivering on time, or if there are other issues that may come up, there are higher penalties, horrific penalties that are being sort of lobbed against the businesses, and not really having a partnership lens of how that the cost could be shared, or thinking about other ways to walk through some of the challenges and the difficulties. So that's what they're tending to do more now, make sure that the risk is off their plate and it's on somebody else's plate in a way that's really not quite fair. And so I'm having to work with my clients to figure out how to negotiate better deals.
Yeah, it's a hot potato, I think, at the moment. But actually, before we go into too many solutions, because I just remembered something, is that we should address, and that is, do we expect this to continue? Because if not, then, like the subject is somewhat like less relevant, although I think that we're all agreeing here that we do. With that said, I'll bring up the fact that obviously with the Russia-Ukraine war, it certainly led to escalating prices and concerns about obviously oil and gas, food. There's a plethora of issues coming from there. And then there's Taiwan and China, and concerns about like all the risks associated with China. So I see some competing pressures in terms of keeping prices high out there. But what do you all, does anyone have anything to add to that or debate on that topic?
I don't know about debate. I think we're in this for quite a bit of time, and industry specific may have improvements here and there, but I do think this is, between the labor shortages and, like you said, the pressures out in Ukraine and Russia, there will just be another new disruption that will tail on to that one. So
yeah.
And
go ahead, Karen.
We're still not finished with some of the impacts of the pandemic either. We're not past the pandemic. That is still having some impact in terms of how businesses are operating. So I think some of the financial analysts and professionals thought that maybe we would enter into a shorter inflationary period. And I think some of them are surprised that it's been lasting longer than what they would have predicted. And so in the work that I'm doing with my clients, and we'll get to the solutions later, but what I'll say is we are doing scenario planning that assumes that inflation and high interest rates and some of those things will continue for a while.
Yeah, yes, completely agree. Because you just brought up another point, and that is China has been in lockdown. Shanghai's been in lockdown for quite a while. They were in lockdown for at least a month, I think it was. And then they've been kind of going in and out. So there's definite supply issues coming out of China. It's like why Tesla was saying they couldn't get enough vehicles. And now Apple is looking at alternatives to producing their smartphones in China, to looking at India and some other places. So there's a lot of constraints, shall we say.
Lisa, what does it say about our leadership that they are only thinking about these things now rather than earlier in the piece?
Yeah, I that leads me to like the number one issue, it seems from clients, is still goes back to people. So where are the leaders? To your point, David, I don't know that anyone. I have a couple of key clients that are forward thinking, but I would say that they are the people who are forward thinking are in short supply, and many of them are retired, thinking about retiring, looking for one last payday of sorts, and then thinking about like, I've had enough of this. So, where did all the leaders go is probably one of our biggest problems here, it seems. I know, Karen, that's one of your hot topics. So, well, and actually I didn't actually mean to do this, but there was an anonymous attendee that wants to know, where did all the people go? Well, not that anyone has that answer, but what I can tell you is, from what I understand, is really lots of people have like retired. Lots of people have said, whether they're men or women, perhaps if they had two income families, they thought, you know what, this is working out quite fine. I can maybe do one of them might keep working, and the other one might say, I might do something part-time while I'm spending more quality time with family, because after all, there's only time is limited after the pandemic. It's crazy. There's people who've decided to go on new career paths and do nothing like what they used to do, and are taking all their knowledge with them. Go ahead, David. What'd you say?
And in this country, there's a lot of people not turning up for work because they are either close contacts of COVID people, or they have COVID, or whatever it
Yep.
is. There's that impact of COVID, and it's reduced the number of people in the pool that are capable to be do that. Again, in our country, because we locked the borders, we were very, very reliant on immigrants for our resource pool, and that's just completely come to a standstill. So we have more jobs available now than we have people that are unemployed.
Yeah, we have limited. We have less people available as well, at least for the right positions. Definitely problematic. And actually there are a lot of people out for COVID, but there's actually a lot of, the other thing that's happening, which sounds kind of crazy, but there's several clients that actually yesterday, a client said that they were going to have to reduce their output by, I think if it's either 20% or 25% in the month of August, because everyone was going on vacation. I'm like, okay. So let's see, what can we do? What we're going to have to maybe do is move it to another facility that produces. At least they have that option, but it's going to be higher freight costs and whatnot else. So
business must be good if they can afford to lose that sort of production.
Right. Exactly. So it's not like something you can, obviously you could plan it. However, it's hard to keep people. So
in a lot of the businesses that I work with, the bottom 15, 20% of the client base isn't being actively managed out of the business. And so we've got a supply shortage of people, and their strategy is to grow by attracting more talent. Right? And I go, clean up your business and get rid of the dead, non-profitable, terrible clients. We've all got them, customers. Yep. And focus on the better few at the top. Just do that. Inflation will mean nothing to you, because your value increase will be well above inflation.
I think that's brilliant.
You might need a greater talent pool because you're doing more with less. And then you've got to reward your good people accordingly to hold them.
Yep. No, I completely agree with you, Evan. It's actually, I was with several CEOs recently, and the topic was about hiring like top talent. And I'm like, where are you all looking for where are you finding any of these people that can answer any of these questions? Why are we not looking at the people we already have, finding the ones that have the potential, like you said, Evan, the ones that aren't, like, just cut them loose. So they'll have a job someplace else. not in your company dragging you down. So anyway, it's kind of crazy.
This is reminding me of something Evans has reminded me of something in what you just said as well, Lisa, which is this: even as companies are sort of reshaping in terms of the employee mix and who's there, there's a delicate balance, and they have to be careful, because as I'm talking to my clients about scenario planning and planning for the future, we are still planning for what I call success. We're not planning for failure. We're not planning for shrinking, because if you plan for that, that is exactly what's going to happen. You're going to lose the really good people that you need. And in the industries where I work, the people they're skilled workers that are difficult to find even in good times. And so you don't want to be letting those people go. And then suddenly when the market turns around, you have no capacity to respond to the demand or respond to the need. So I think that companies have to really be strategic in thinking about the cutting part, and also be thinking about how can they be positioned for success now and in the future.
Again,
You're absolutely right. I really see that I see some companies / clients, of course, if they're clients, I would advise them not to do this, but like if they start to get that mentality of cutting back because they're panicked, it leads to, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm not suggesting they should go out and go spending extra money that they don't have and doing crazy things, but they really need to be like thinking about where they really want to go in the future, and then like plan to get there. Go ahead, David. I think you were going to say something.
No, that's okay. What I was going to say before is a common refrain of mine on these webinars is not enough businesses or executives focus on the business 101. And these sorts of things are all just really the basics of running a very successful business. And if they're only focused on the 101s, then they're going to be very, very successful. So to Evan's point before about the customer profitability, who on a regular basis is examining their cost to serve and understanding which of their customer base is actually making the money, and which of those products in that sales cycle are making money, and which are you just contributing to your inventory tail that adds no value to your business. Now, there are very few of my clients who are doing that on a regular basis until they engage with me. And then we start to do these things, and it makes massive differences to the way their business operates.
Absolutely. So Diane, I know like they just reminded me of two clients that we collaborated on together. So one relates to the customer product profitability. Maybe you could tell us about that. And then the other relates to a client testimonial that that our client was providing that relates specifically to like the concerns about how to, bring an organization up to speed quickly. So do you want to maybe talk to those?
I guess briefly? Let's start with the profitability model. So like David and Evan pointed out, companies are not spending the time to look at their bottom 15 customers, products. But David, one of the things that I find working with clients is they don't always have the tools and the information to understand what those are. So Lisa and I, like she said, collaborated and spent some time on a model. It took some time. It wasn't actually that massive of an effort. It was really just understanding, sales history and product trends and customer trends. But once we got that model put together, it's a big help in seeing, the future here in the next.
The data is there, but the trouble is the ERP vendors who manufacture the software applications don't understand the business well enough, don't understand what tools business people need. There's lots of these sorts of analysis that just do not come generically out of an ERP system. You have to go in there and just mine the data and create your own dashboards.
Well, and I think that's Lisa's
exactly.
other point is that, it's hard to come by those who can put their hands on it and interpret it and analyze and actually come out with an answer that makes sense. So you really, like Lisa mentioned, a client testimonial that we received is that we are those who can actually come into the environment and no matter, what they're up against, really understand the data and give them the tools and visibility, because that's the big portion of it.
Yeah, and then then they can carry it forward. What we're in another group I was talking to earlier this week of CEOs, we were trying to explain, like you said, David, you don't have to get so sidetracked by my I don't know how to get this out of the ERP system, and it's going to be like I don't know, X amount of dollars and Y amount of time. That's way longer than you need. So generally speaking, it doesn't matter what your system is, you're going to be able to get data out of it to make a quick and dirty analysis of your customer and product profitability, or you can at least get directionally correct information from talking to the people and, you know, making some key assumptions. You don't need to get bogged down. And I would definitely say that's one key thing that it sounds like, you know, several of us are saying here. And I know, Evan, you do that all the time for your clients from the financial point of view.
Let's keep it a secret between us, but that's basically, I make a lot of money doing that. Go stack the bottom 15%, go find the green shoots and bring them forward, and go attract some new top customers.
Yep.
You know,
Leads us back to Karen, right? Don't plan for no growth. Like, let's figure out who to target and plan for growth. I mean, you may even plan for like different segments, right? If you sack the bottom 15%, as Evan said, or you have plenty more volume opportunities if you have limited capacity, let's say, for an interim period, because perhaps you're bringing additional capacity on board, where you can target more of the key customers or the ideal customers or the customers who you would love to have, and the people who are supporting them currently can't support them.
Mhm.
Why not go after them?
And that's one of the reasons why I like EVA as a one number indicator about how well you're adding value to your business. Because if it's in a negative situation, you can start to analyze all of these other 6 or 7 areas that we've been talking about to help turn that around. But it's the one number that will tell you whether you're in the right direction or not. So you're talking before about directionally getting things right for getting the data out of the ERP system. That's 100% correct, Lisa. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be strong and good. And don't let success or perfection get in the way of success. Right. So just start doing it, because 9 times out of 10 businesses or executives aren't even looking at this. So A, start looking, and B, start the direction. And guess what? You're going to get there.
Right. I completely agree. So one we're pretty much saying is look at some directionally correct data mining and or, making some key decisions. Like with some clients, they already know. I mean, you should obviously do what you can to confirm from a directionally correct point of view your data, but don't get sidetracked. What's another back to the basics, David? What's another basic that you are thinking of, and then we can all debate about that.
Well, these are all sort of tied together. I mentioned earlier in the piece, excuse me, the inventory tail. There was a JP Morgan survey recently, I think, around manufacturing and distribution companies, and over 67 or 70% or something of that magnitude of companies that they surveyed, their first reaction was to buy more inventory. Now, are you buying the right amount of inventory? Are you buying the right products? Are you just increasing the problem by increasing your tail? That's just a typical knee-jerk reaction. So good, sound inventory management practices are a really good place to start.
Completely agree. That's the other thing clients have been really focused on recently is actually I heard that at the Gartner conference, one of the areas of specialty is like PSYOP. So you do need to know, what is your future forecast going to look like? What do you want your future to look like so you can make it happen? And you can figure out where you're going to get the right capacity from or prioritize customers. But the devil lies in the details and the execution. Like the 80-20 is all about making it happen, which comes back to solid planning practices, inventory planning practices. I mean, these are not rocket science, but they are, I don't know if you guys have a percentage, but I would just venture to say that, well, I don't know, close to 100% of clients could use improvement in these areas.
Absolutely.
But certainly more than 80. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
So that's 70% that reacted by buying more inventory, right? All they've done really is chew up their cash.
Sure, exactly. Like, do you have the right inventory, and is it in the right place at the right time? I mean, I've just started saying, these are basics. Go ahead, Karen. What were you going to say about that?
I'm just going to say, even though I'm focused principally on leadership and I have thoughts on that there, I do have some thoughts on this financial end as well. because that's a part of what my clients are dealing with also. And so some clients don't even have at the ready for the line managers the financial tools that they need to understand their daily positioning and where they are. People have to know their financial data so they can make the best decisions. You can have some really smart people working in your company, but if you have a firewall up and they can't get the data, it's hard to know what to do next. So I think making financial data more transparent is one of the things I do talk to my clients about. Also, when you have that transparency, here's some things you're able to do. You're able to look at your spending. Maybe you've spent in a certain way in the past, but going into these inflationary times, you may want to have a different model in place for how you spend your resources and allocate them differently. That's a decision that really has to be thought about and really considered. So I talk to clients about that. I talk about things such as, can you put some agreements in place where you might buy some materials now in today's prices? And as I mentioned, they don't have this room and space to store things, but whoever you're buying it from, they don't deliver it to you until later. They've reserved it for you. Now, it's hard to come up with those deals, but you can't come up with them if you don't think about it and if you don't ask for it. So this is one of the financial strategies that I do talk to them about. And then some of my clients, a lot of my clients, are really losing money by being inefficient in how the manufacturing goes in the plant. So you've got to look at ways to stop the unnecessary losses from having to remake items, redo work, and that costs clients. So if they could just become more efficient in manufacturing, that already puts a lot of money in their bank account. So those are just some of the financial strategies I'm using with clients.
Well, no, and I mean, I think that some of the ways you do that is by having clarity of your planning and inventory processes. How do you more level load and predict what you're going to need when, so that you can plan ahead of time what you're doing in operations, which is difficult with, as Evan said earlier, speed up, stop, but there's no like driving at a normal speed around here. So, you have to be better at all these basics. Go ahead, David.
And Lisa, the other component there is real-time data capture. Like here we are in 2022, right? And I've just completed a job with a manufacturer here in my hometown, right? They have not used real-time data capture anywhere in the business. So they're not using barcodes. They're not using radio frequency. They're not. So if you can get consumption from your production line or from information from your machines on your production line in real time, that makes that whole decision-making process and financial visibility completely differently. But if we're waiting for reaction and batch jobs and people to complete things manually and those sorts of things, that's where that efficiency and the profit leaks out through those areas. Right? You start to get real-time data capture happening on a regular basis, then that tightens all of those watertight doors, if you like, and holds the cash within the business that you can then get better visibility on and manage in a better way.
Go ahead, Diane.
Well, I was just going to add that one of the things I work with my clients on is a sales, inventory, and operations planning process. And when you're looking at that from start to finish, those are the things that would come out of it. You might start somewhere and make an improvement upon, disciplines and your inventory programs and add Kanbans and add insights to your process. But if you're doing the process, you're always improving and finding ways to improve.
That's very true. Some sort of a continuous cadence where you're looking at PSYOP is certainly important. And I think that this has led to another core category, and then we'll also talk about people, which we already started to touch upon. But from the other side of things, we have technology. I mean, you just started to you've been bringing up data and mining data, but the automation technology, ways to, we simply don't have enough people, and we're reshoring, at least in the US area, we're reshoring and nearshoring significantly because there's a lot of risk in China, and there's extended lead times and all sorts of hassles in getting things from the Asia area. So there's a lot of reshoring, nearshoring, and we need to find ways to do that more effectively. So I think there's a significant rise in technology and automation as well. Are you all seeing that also?
I am, although in Australia, I don't believe that the reshoring of the manufacturing base is going to be as strong as it is in the US.
Yeah.
I think our energy prices here are going to be a major stumbling block for that. I've said that for a long time, and the government that we've got now, I do not see as having the answers to that problem. So I think that's going to be a major issue. So if manufacturing is going to come back to this country, it's going to have machinery, robotics, those sorts of things. And then getting back to that technology question that you just raised, I don't believe the ERP system vendors are grasping that nettle fast enough. I don't think those integration points with those sorts of tools, the IIoT component of that, I don't think they're grasping that nettle anywhere near quickly enough.
That's a good point. And really that reminds me of like California as an example. So you aren't, unfortunately, since I live in California, and in this area that close to where I live anyway, it's generally speaking been more favorable to manufacturing and logistics. And it's significant because we have the largest ports that bring in 40% of the products. However, California has the same problems that Australia has when it comes to the price of energy. It's the #1 price of energy in the US. And so it's cost prohibitive from a manufacturing standpoint. But the good news is that we do have several other states that allow for efficient manufacturing. So anyway, Diane, what are you seeing? Like, I know that I think, what about from an AI point of view and, like utilizing software and technology, are you seeing that increase?
I think some of my clients are looking for softwares and programs that would bring in the AI. So I've done selection projects with BI tools that would incorporate the AI capabilities. Like David mentioned, I don't think they're embracing or envisioning as much or quickly as they should. But I do think that I work with clients that are starting to embrace it, and there are some good capabilities in terms of the data mining, being able maybe in the biggest case to help with that profitability question, where you can kind of group things and the software can kind of recognize those groupings. So I think there's a lot of potential and a lot of software out there that does that today. It's just actually implementing it and like David and you mentioned, don't get sucked into perfection here.
Well,
Yeah.
I've got to be honest, I have a slightly different view on AI specifically. I think AI is kicking a lot of goals in the health space, where around helping diagnosis, particularly cancer and those sorts of things. The data from that is being used really well by a lot of the algorithms. I've had one client, they're a global manufacturer, if you like, and they went into partnership with Microsoft and did an AI project where they were using the Azure AI component, machine learning component, to help them develop their forecasts, to make their forecasts more accurate. And that project fell in a heap because it was not successful. So I am still yet to see workable solutions leveraging AI. Lots of talk about and lots of trials about how we can do these things, but whether they're actually going to be productive and be useful, I'm still a little bit skeptical in that space just yet.
Well, and I think that's somewhat true. I mean, it's like that with blockchain too. There's lots of conversation, but not much in reality. With that said, though, like there is some exciting progress in some of those areas. But I would agree with you, David. Like for the mid-market and even some of the larger companies, it's not happening. They really need to stick to the basics and they'll be successful. With that said, though, there is like some exciting planning software that I saw that can pretty much learn from a engineer to order, configure to order standpoint. And
again, Lisa, all of that relies on clean data in the first.
It totally does. Right? Although AI can help.
It can help clean up to some extent.
It can help clean up, but you know what? It doesn't know. It can't like just help with a complete mess. It is not magical.
I have a high level comment on this. Because I'm not in the weeds on this as much as you guys are, but I would say that in a manufacturing environment where skilled labor is important, what I think clients are doing better at is identifying and finding and procuring the kind of machinery that is needed to do the more mundane task. Because if you
Yep.
have less people there, you don't want your highly skilled workforce being burned out, having to work overtime nights and weekends because they're doing these low level tasks that a great machine would do. It would be equivalent to, you know, washing your clothes on the washboard when you could throw it in the automatic washing machine. So I do think that in manufacturing, something as basic as that, without even having to think about artificial intelligence, is very valuable.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. You know, like a lot of our clients could benefit greatly just by some simple improvements and automating repetitive tasks. It sounds boring, but it's quite successful. So since all of this, including the implementation of technology, is dependent on people, so Karen, what do you think about? I know you focus a lot on the people side and leadership side. So what do you see there? And you know, we all.
Let me just say this, because what I'm really doing with my better clients now is I'm sitting down with the executive leadership teams and talking to them about the scenario planning in advance and really about planning for success. And a lot of times clients in their mind, they're planning for a disaster, they're planning for, you know, some crisis to occur, but the mindset is important because we have to remember that at every economic time period, including the Great Depression of the United States, there have been businesses that have been successful through all of that. So I'm really focusing on a mind shift change with my clients. And the mind shift is this. First, yes, you may have to cut some things in terms of operations and become more efficient. Yes, you may have to figure out what are your most profitable offerings and go for those and drop some of the things that are time intensive, labor intensive, people intensive, but you're not really getting a good return on. So that is true. And more importantly, I'm helping my clients think about how do you become a value leader, not the low cost leader. And a value leader, what a value leader does is looks around and say, what's needed in this marketplace? What do my clients, customers really want? What if they even told me that they're looking for and they're frustrated by because they don't have it, can't find it? How can we fill the gaps in a way that no one else is doing so that we stand out in the marketplace? And let's say half the businesses are gone, but we're going to be one of the ones that's remaining, and we're profitable and valuable because we're providing a service that's valuable, it's needed, it's wanted, and other people aren't doing it. And for others to ramp up later, they're going to be to the party too late. So I'm trying to get my clients to the party early so that they're ready to take advantage of the opportunities in this new market.
Well, and what I would say about that is if you're interested in doing that, which you should be if you want to be successful, scenario planning, one of the ways to do that is through a process called sales and operations planning, or SIOP. And it allows you to look at those scenarios, understand where you're going so that you can proactively manage that process successfully. And David, you're laughing probably because you were going to say the same thing. Is that true?
I knew where you were going.
I'll say, I want to
Well,
say
she led us to the water here.
but I want to say something simpler before we get there, because even people who may not have those tools in place yet, this is simpler than you might think. In this way,
It's true.
you've got to talk to clients. You've got to be in touch with them. You've got to interview them. You've got to remember, what if they said to us even when we weren't asking? So you've got to pay attention to things you probably already know, just haven't been acting on. So I want to say there's the simple solution, and then there are the more elegant solutions.
Well, that
Karen,
is
can
true.
you
And
talk to Apple?
that's actually true with SIOP regardless. I can't tell you, I don't know that I've had any clients with SIOP, and that's like a specialty area in our consulting practice. Every single one has been, I've said the same thing you're saying, Karen. Start with what you have. Let's start with something that's directionally correct so we can start to make decisions that'll lead you going in the right direction according to where do you want to end up, and what are your customers really doing? Because that's the 80-20 of what half well, more than half. 80% of clients don't do a good enough job of just even like talking to their customers, or even if they do, they don't like communicate it so that we can figure out like, what do we need to be doing here? Like,
Again,
why are
that's
we reshoring when the customer wants something totally new? Let's put together a different product or whatever we need to be doing.
that's a business 101.
You what, David?
He says it's
It's
That's a business 101.
This business 101, that's totally true. Evan, go ahead. You're leaning forward.
No.
I can see you want to say something.
I'm good.
Very good. What about you, Diane? Like, what
Well,
do you see about that?
I agree with all of this. Like you said, it's, I think like you mentioned, maybe just don't be afraid to pilot concepts and ideas and see, how it goes and then build upon it from there. It's a
But
place
it
to
is
start.
extraordinary to think how many big brands still don't do this very well. And I was flippantly saying to Karen, can you tell Apple? Because I had a problem with their service department yesterday and they just weren't listening. And it is just a very simple thing that many brands just don't do very well.
Well, and I
True.
think
It's
sometimes
uncommon.
we
Go
forget
ahead.
the simplicities of just communication and like she said, listen to your customers and understand your trends so that your operational team is ready, to take that baton off. So it's really basics like communication and visibility and, obviously you need people to do this. So keep them.
It's really basic. What about even just communicating with your organization so people know what other people are doing?
Yes.
It's quite crazy the things that help clients like save millions of dollars and improve their on time in full performance from like 30%, 38% to high 90s. And it's like these blocking and tackling kind of things. It's not as though they are not smart. It's just that everyone's got a lot going on, so it's sometimes a matter of just priority and thinking about how do we like regroup in a way that's going to help us all work together.
I'm going to use a weird example. I'm known for that. So as a consumer, and let's say buying retail products, let's say I'm buying some business attire. There's a company that I really like in terms of the products that they produce and so on and so forth. I have given them feedback multiple times as they are sending me information to please include what is the fabric content and what is the cost of the item, because they'll send me pictures, they'll send me videos, they'll send me all of this exotic stuff because they know that I like the product. And then if I have to go 2 or 3 more steps in a very busy day to try to track down the information that I need in order to make a buying decision, you probably just lost a sale today because I've got other things to do. My whole day is not about tracking this information down, and especially when I've already informed you that I need it. So what I'm saying, this is just an example. As a consumer, I'm telling, them, what I want. It's very clear. They know what I want. They can even repeat it back. Do they do it? Less than 50% of the time.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's execution, right?
Mhm.
Mine
It
was
all
simple.
boils down to
I just
making
wanted
things
a
happen.
scheduled time to go and put my laptop to be serviced, a scheduled time. So tell me when and how long I'm going to have to put it away for. And that's all I wanted. But do you think they can deliver that? No.
And this is
Well-
how we leave money on the table by not listening to those who are already contacting us for our products and services, who are already buying our products and services. And those are the people we ought to be listening to because they'll probably buy more.
I've got examples after examples of businesses in my hometown that have come to my house and given me a quote to do some work and
No follow up.
no follow-up. Or, the quote 2 weeks later doesn't come. And therefore, there's no measurement in that business, by the way, of leads and conversion. There's no measurement of retention rate of customers. So, every answer becomes a marketing and selling harder answer. And what's the point if you're paying to send someone out? Walk around, do the quote, they've spent the time here and you fall over by either not delivering it or following it up.
Yeah,
It's
I-
rife.
it's the basics. I mean, and that
And
happens a lot.
they will complain that inflation is spoiling their business.
It's true.
Well, here's another one for you. You're in the construction industry. I don't know whether you come across this, Dr. Karen, but you know, I know some commercial builders here, you know, maybe 50, 100 million turnover, and they're thin margins, you know, 2%, 3%, 1% in some of the bigger ones. And 20% of that profit comes from tradies that the builders engaged who never send the invoice for the work that they do. You know, so in a $50 million turnover company, this is like, you know, quite a few $100,000, you know. So a big percentage of the profit. So there's, you know, I've got examples now of business owners who do the work, pay for the shit, get their labor to deliver, and then forget to invoice the bastard.
Now
That's
that's just
101.
low-hanging fruit money. No one should be losing because of that.
That is totally true. But I think you all are absolutely correct. I mean, the cost of retention, I mean, if you just think about that, and that leads you back to what are your customer service like? What's your customer service look like now? What do you need to do to improve it? Leads us back to the basics as we've been talking about. But
there's more to that too. In an inflationary environment, right? You run a high risk of losing business on price. And
yeah,
if you are competing on value, then you're not going to lose it on price, and the inflationary environment's not going to matter that much.
right.
Exactly. And I want to add one other comment to that. Thank you so much, David, for saying that, because customer service is the basic. Every company has got to deliver customer service. However, if you wow your client, if you are memorable, if you serve in such a way that they're telling stories about you, that's what also will weather, you know,
Yep.
recessionary, inflationary times.
Yep, absolutely true. And as you know, many of the attendees are folks who work at manufacturers and distribution operations, and you know that we can have a huge impact with those types of topics. And like to your guys' point, customer service alone is no longer going to cut it. I mean, we have all become accustomed to personalized service. It's the customized, personalized
Yes.
service without the people, all right? Because we have like so many people, we have so few people, like we can't afford to get rid of those kinds of very important things. So since we're at the top of the hour, I thought I'd have each of us just say maybe, you know, just a sentence or something about a takeaway that you think that we should walk away with here today. And if anyone has any last minute questions, let us know, but we've been trying to answer them as we go. So who would like to start with a takeaway here? And I'll speak at once here.
Well, if you're in an inflationary environment, okay, and you're thinking you want to put your prices up, how you go about it matters. And if you can add value as you increase your price, you are far more likely to be successful in that endeavor. So I think that's, you know, something businesses should be thinking about, because just jacking the price, you know, all by itself isn't a great signal.
It's a great
Particularly
point.
if your service drops as well.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the last thing you want to do. All right. Well, what other, that's a great key point. Gets us started. Who wants to go next?
I
Diane?
can go next here. I guess the main thing that resonated with me today is the conversation around the profitability model and knowing, you know, what your top customers, bottom customer, top products, and so on. And so I guess it's just it's a place to start. I give practical advice here. Download your sales history and take a look at your insights on that report.
Very good. All right. Well,
Diane,
what about you? Go ahead, David.
Diane pinched mine, so I'm going to have to.
Diane, you took it.
I apologize.
Be early, be fast, I guess, David. So think fast while Karen gives us her takeaway.
So the other side of that, of course, is at an operational level, inventory management and supplier management, all of those sorts of things around inventory control are really the hub of the business upon which all of this other services and those sorts of things really come from. It's hard to provide good services if you don't have the right product in the right place at the right time and the right, etc. So inventory management is an area where I think you should be focusing on, particularly around your inventory tail, because that's costing and consuming capital, right? And then combine that with what Diane mentioned before around the customer profitability to make sure that you're selling the right products to the right customers, and the inflationary environment will look after itself.
All right. So what about you, Karen?
All right, here's what I would say. Success is intentional, and it's something that starts in the mind first. It's something that you plan, and I would encourage everyone out there to plan for success. And there are a few things that I would say that are part of this. Number one, you have to decide, what does success look like for you? What do you want? What do you want to go after? Number two, assess the environment that you're in so that you know what are the challenges, what are the opportunities of that environment. And then number three, decide, what is it going to take for us to get there, to get to this level of success with this kind of environment in place. If you do that repeatedly, continuously, you will succeed.
Very good. Well, and I would wrap it up with, I actually think in order to do any of these, you're going to need key talent or key people. So many, I would say 80% of the time, I find somebody who has talents that are unutilized, maybe more than that, but we'll just go with 80%. Organizations could better leverage these people. They already exist. So look internally. Don't even be thinking about hiring. It's very difficult to find anyone today. I mean, you might have to go there, but look internally, see what talent you already have. And then I heard about a survey recently that for the first time in, like, I don't know if it's ever or a long time, the most important thing to employees was not the pay, but it was development opportunities. So are you providing the ability to mentor them? Are you providing, it's hard work, folks, but you got to do it. Are you providing, we're at an APIX session here. Are you providing APIX training sessions, so that they have the opportunity to learn new concepts? Are you allowing them to go to conferences? Like, what are you doing to develop them? So I would leave us on that note, because without people, you aren't going to do any of these tactics today. And you may as well sell your company, or if you work for a larger company and you're just working there, jump ship. If you're a leader, you better change your culture. Well, thank you. This has been a great discussion on inflation, recessions, what's going to go on. It sounds like we all agree that we're going to be handling this volatility and jumping back and forth. Really having both at one time, inflationary pressures and recessionary concerns happening simultaneously. So we hopefully you've able to take a couple of key points away. We will do another one of these from with this expert panel next quarter. And for the APIX ASCM folks, we're going to do next month, we're going to have John Tulak, who's an international business attorney, and he is an expert on China, Mexico, and also and energy. So, what could be better? So we're going to get his take on what is going on in the world and where do we need to be focusing our efforts to avoid the different catastrophes that are happening everywhere so that we can be successful. Stay tuned on our website at apix-ie.org. And thanks for joining us.